السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. الحمد لله رب العالمين، وأصلي وأسلم على سيد الأنبياء والمرسلين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي. رب زدنا علما، رب زدنا علما، رب زدنا علما نافعا، آمين. Before we move to the discussion about reform and revival, we have one topic remaining from the previous theme, which was about manifestations of intellectual decline. We talked about the economic and social areas, and we are left with only political sphere. The manifestations of intellectual decline in the political sphere. So we have the political sphere. And the divide, political divide in the Ummah, which manifested in the Sunni and Shia differences. We said that in this age, the Sunni state was represented by the Seljuks. And due to their weak economic and political policies, these states did not survive for long. We talked about that in the previous session. So after the death of Sultan Malik Shah in the year 486, the Sunni Seljuk state started to crumble and disintegrate, because Malik Shah divided his divided his political authority between his sons. So this, or it was, they lacked. So we have Barkiyagruk, he controlled the Persia and maintained his dominance on Baghdad. Khorasan, the Afghanistan and the allied areas were controlled by another son, Sanjar. And Halab, the Syrian territory, was controlled by Ibn Tatish. He was another son. And likewise, Dimashq by another son of the Sultan. So basically, this disintegration, it weakened the Ummah. And this was the only state which was representing the Sunni Ummah. And at the same time, the Greater Sham and Palestine is part of that Greater Sham, Greater Syria, which has very great importance in the texts, in the Quran, in the Sunnah, and it has also important strategic relevance in our history. So this Greater Sham was also divided into small political entities between the ruling class and those who represented the ruling class. So because of this disintegration, political divide, which was the manifestation of which at the highest level was Sunni and Shia states, the Fatimids ruling in Egypt, and the Sunni Seljuks, which started disintegrating, and the Fatimids also did not survive for long. And we mentioned why, we mentioned the reasons. this disintegration led to internal tussle, internal differences, and they destroyed their resources and energies in fighting each other, whether politically, diplomatically, or the battles which happened between these small entities. And sometimes this small political entity would cover a very small region or area. It would not be a big state. So this political divide and disintegration had serious evil consequences in the Muslim Ummah. And this internal weakness was eventually utilized against us by our enemies, particularly the Crusades. So within each state, there were small states, and the tussle between the ruling class has been recorded by the historians of this era. And they would loot each other, they would fight each other, like in our times. So one of the main problems which the Ummah faced in those times was disintegration and disunity, like in our times. The Muslim world, particularly the Middle East, is disunited. Disunited in vision, in mission, in diplomacy, in politics. So every country wants to maintain its power by hook or by crook, even by allying with the West, and nothing unites them. Even the political entities which seem united, like the Arab countries, UAE, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and these, they also have internal divisions. They are not united. Now we can see them united because they share the same interest, or because they're aligned with the West, or at least they're serving the interests of the West. But they also have internal problems or aspirations which cause this division, like the modernization of Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia wants to become like Dubai, UAE. Saudi Arabia wants to modernize its economy by all means possible, by good or evil means, so that the big companies, they abandon UAE and they come to Saudi Arabia. This is one of the policies. So they seem united, but they have this internal division and disunity, and it overall it destroys the fabric of the Ummah, and it weakens us against the common enemy or the higher threats. So we see in this era, the historians have mentioned some particular tribes who destroyed the unity of the Ummah. They would loot and plunder, and I have many examples in front of me. And these small imarat, yani these small political entities, they became a curse on the Ummah. So for example, one of those imarat which have been mentioned by the historians of those times, like is the imara of Qabila Bani Mazid. This was a tribe which established a small political entity, and in Iraq, and they became a curse for the Ummah. So he says, Al-Imam Ibn Tighri Birdi, he says, وَكَانَ شَرَّ أَهْلِ بَيْتِهِ يَرْتَكِبُ الْكَبَائِرَ وَيَفْعَلُ الْعَظَائِمِ. They were the most evil of people, evil of tribes. They committed all types of crimes and sins. وَلَقِيَ مِنْهُ الْخَلِيفَةُ وَالْمُسْلِمُونَ شُرُورًا كَثِيرًا. The Khalifa himself, and as I mentioned, the Abbasid Khilafah was still surviving, but it was only symbolic. It was very weak. The Khalifa and generally the Muslims, they faced a lot of evil from this Qabila, from this particular Imara. وَأَبْطَلَ الْحَجَّ وَأَبَاحَ الْفُرُوجَ فِي رَمَضَانِ. They even, their raids led to the suspension of Hajj, and they plundered and raped even in Ramadan. وكانت أيامه 67 years. And they did this, their imara, it sustained for 67 years until the Seljuki Sultan Mas'ud killed the leader of this tribe or small imara in the year 529. This is one example. So Ummah was divided into these small entities, very small entities. A tribe would become one imara because the umbrella body of the Ummah, al-Khilafa, al-Abbasiyya, was only symbolic. It was not there. So when we don't have the unity, Ummah will divide into small entities and start destroying each other. The Umara, so these Imarat and Umara, the leaders, the small political entities, they would survive for their own sake. They had nothing to do with the higher goals of the Ummah. This is what happens when we don't have unity, when we don't have, when we don't foster political, economic, or social unity. We don't cherish higher goals. We only work for trivial matters and survival. Umara of Hijaz, the Arabian Peninsula, the Umara, which will the leaders, political leaders there, the rulers, they would practice nifaq, hypocrisy. Sometimes they would support the Abbasids, the Sunnis, and some other times they would prefer the Fatimids, the Shia Fatimids, based on their political gains and interests. وكانوا يقتلون الحجاج ويأخذون أموالهم وخاصة أمير مكة محمد ibn Abi Hashim. So Ibn Tigri Birdi rahimahullah has mentioned that sometimes they would even kill the pilgrims. These atrocities and destructions have happened earlier also. But the only difference between our times and the history is that now we have recorded history. We can see the destruction online. In those times, it was only written history. Okay? So, and the original sources for us as Muslims are in Arabic. So most of us, we don't have access to these original sources. We don't know the language. And those who know, which we can see directly in front of our eyes. So he says, وَكَانُوا يَقْتُلُونَ الْحُجَّاجِ. They would even kill pilgrims. Another problem which happened is the Shia-Sunni divide. The Muslims were not able to negotiate and manage their ikhtilaf. So they entered into a perpetual rift. This perpetual rift between the Sunni Seljuks and the Shia Fatimids. This is a big problem. So basically, survival and political stability, nation building is based on many important principles. One of those principles is negotiating with the enemy. So geopolitics and alliances in politics is not necessarily only based on friendship. We may disagree with a party, we may not agree with their ideology, we may even be enemies, but sometimes we have to create a strategic alliance in order to survive, in order to maintain the, in order to balance the power struggle. If a particular nation, people, political group, political institution, political party does not know the art of this balance, it will never survive. Okay, so you can see, I have given this example before also, the West in the leadership of United States, which is destroying us in the Middle East, killing our children and raping our women in Palestine and Gaza, it is basically United States. Israel is just a pawn. Israel can not even survive for 1 hour without the help of United States. So you can see how they manage their disagreements. Yahud and Nasara are hand to hand, or we can say the Jews are controlling the Christian West. which has not remained so Christian anyways. But still they have this, in spite of their differences in their ideology, in spite of serious ikhtilaf at the core of their religions and ideologies, they are one hand against the Muslims. And we have much in common. In spite of that, we are not able to. I'm not declaring any party good or evil. I'm just stating the facts. This is a reality. We have this divide, and unfortunately, the Sunni world is in slumber. Remember this. Palestine is a Sunni problem. It is not a Shia problem. Shia madhab has its own priorities and preferences. It is well known to those who study Aqidah and the Shia madhab. For them, Najaf, Iraq, and Shia religious places are more important than Palestine, than Jerusalem, Baitul Maqdis. It is purely a Sunni problem. And in history also, it was liberated by the Sunnis. However, we are sleeping. And now the Shia Iran, and this is not we are not blaming them or cursing them in anything. This is their madhab. They represent Shia madhab. They are at the front lines against the Jews. This is a big problem. This is a problem and a solution at the same time. So in history also, in this particular age, we lacked this ikhtilaf management, we can call it, engaging with the other, engaging with our enemies. And if we look at the Shia madhab, the majority of our scholars have not done blanket takfir of the Shia. Remember this. Even those who are very strict in these masail, our scholars consider them from the deviant groups. They have deviance in many matters, in Aqidah, in their positions. But our scholars, Sunni scholars, in the past and the present, have not done a blanket takfir of them. Selective takfir is there of particular scholars or extremist groups here and there, but they have not done blanket takfir. So if we believe that they are from deviant, they are a deviant sect, but they are Muslims, and they believe in the same Quran, they believe in the same Mus'haf. Now this is the case with them. They face the same Qibla. Why can't we create a strategic alliance with them? I myself am reflecting, particularly in our times, reflecting on this, the Iran issue, which is very complex. The relationship of Iran, the role of Iran in the Middle East, and the relationship of Iran with Israel and the West. It is a very complex matter, and I have mentioned this many times that in geopolitics, no narrative is permanent. Today, we can have a narrative, and tomorrow incidents happen, something happens, and the narrative changes. No narrative is permanent. So in these changing narratives and geopolitics, why can't we have some legal, some strategic alliances? It is possible. If the Kafir West can unite on the common cause, the Jews and the Christians, who are the opposite poles, they can do a strategic alliance. Why can't we? This is a question, and we have to see. There are different opinions about Iran in between the Sunnis, and I'm talking about those who matter, not the common masses. Some consider them treacherous, who are deceiving the Sunnis, and some others, they consider them great mujahideen who are fighting the cause of Sunnis nowadays. We should always create a balance in understanding these matters. We are not experts of geopolitics, but this is very important. And the resemblance is very clear. In those times also, we destroyed each other in these internal matters. We may maintain the difference of opinion. We may say, well, we disagree each other. We don't consider each other orthodox. Sunnis don't consider Shia orthodox, and Shia, they don't consider Sunnis orthodox. Like, okay, let's accept this. Let's keep it on the table. But now we have a greater challenge, isn't it? We can do that. It's not a big thing. So this was a very common problem between the Shias and the Sunnis in those times, which created wrong impact on the Ummah. It destroyed our resources, whether human resources, economic resources, and when the disbelievers attacked us, when the crusades started, we were not well prepared. So there were many fitan which occurred. There were many fitan which occurred in these times, and these fitan eventually sometimes led to the military revolutions, like what happened in the year 450. So, for example, another historian of this era, Imaduddin al-Asfahani, he writes in his book Tarikh Dawlati Ali Saljuk, يعني he has compiled the history of Saljuks. He says في هذه الفترة تمت فتنة البساسيري. In these times, the fitna of Basasiri occurred. ودخل بغداد سادس ذي القعدة سنة 450 after Hijrah. He entered Baghdad in this year. He entered Baghdad. So the Shia in the leadership of this Basasiri, they announced the demolition of the Khilafah, and they called for allegiance to the Fatimi Khalifa. So this was a great fitna. He entered Baghdad, and Baghdad was the seat of the Sunni Khilafah, Abbasid Khilafah. As I said, Abbasid Khilafah had remained only in name. He entered Baghdad in the year 450, and he left Baghdad in the year 451. So this year was a year of destruction. He says, وَكَانَتْ سَنَةً سَيِّئَةً كَادَتْ تَكُونُ لِنُورِ اللَّهِ مُطْفِئَةً. It was a year which seemed to extinguish the light of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. فَإِنَّهُ دَعَا إِلَى الدَّاءِ بِمِصْرَ مِصْرًا وَلَمْ يَجِدْ الْخَلِيفَةَ بِمَقَرِّهِ فِي دَارِ الْأَمَانَةِ مَقَرًّا. So even Khalifa did not feel safe. Khalifa did not feel safe in his own city. So this Shia leader al-Basasiri, he created this coup. Yani we can call it coup in our times. And the fitna of Basasiri, it continued for a long period of time. And Basasiri, he ruled Baghdad in the name of Fatimids until the Seljuks came and they stopped this fitna. The Seljuks, a tribe and a family which created the political state. But they were loyal in name, at least in name, to the Abbasids, and they wanted to keep this the Khilafah, even if symbolic, in name. They did not declare themselves as Khulafa, but they were practically ruling the Muslim Sunni world. So the Seljuks, they came and entered, and they stopped this fitna of al-Basasiri. And after this, the Fatimids, the Fatimi, the Shia rule, which was in Egypt, it created, after they did not succeed in destroying the Khilafah in Baghdad, because the Seljuks intervened, they created a new form of politics. They formed an alliance with the Ismailiyah, the Batini sect. We have talked about this, the fitna of this Batini sect in the first session. And they created, they went into alliance with this Batini sect and used it for assassinations. And this was a famous deviant sect which used drugs and intoxicants and other means to delude its followers. And they were called assassins, the hashashin. They would use the intoxicants to delude their followers. So the Fatimids used this politics of utilizing this particular deviant sect in establishing assassinations, doing assassinations of the Sunni leaders. And this had become easier because of the disintegration of which happened in the Seljuki circles, which we have mentioned. Okay, so with the help of these assassins, they took control of many areas of ruled by Seljuks, which have been mentioned by the historians. I will not go into the details here. They took control of many places controlled by the Seljuks. And the Seljuks, they were not able to, because of the disintegration which had happened, they failed in front of this onslaught. Okay, and this also created great fitna until the Mughal came in the year 654. So this was the eastern part of the Muslim world. In the western part of the Muslim world, the Bilad al-Sham, the greater Syria, the Batinids also, the same group, which was supported by the Fatimids, they created destruction and disruption in the Muslim in the Muslim Ummah of that area. So we can see how the political divide happened, destruction, disintegration, particularly the Sunni Seljuks, the Shia, Fatimids, and the siyasa of these two states were not based on reconciliation, strategic alliance, but rather based on animosity and destroying each other. This weakened the Ummah, and it paved the way for the Crusades. And we are talking about the times immediately before the Crusades. So that's why we only see the tip of the iceberg. We see the Crusades coming and destroying the Muslims and the Muslim Ummah. But we forget about the beginning of the story, the weakness which happened. So we can see these are the main manifestations of the intellectual decline, which led to the destruction of economy, society, and the political authority of the Ummah. And it paved the way for the Crusades. So that's for this reason I said that we must understand the very important principle of our history based on the Quran, which is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not change the condition of a nation until they change their own condition. And this is true both ways. Usually this ayah is used to understand the rise from decline. You will never become powerful, you will never become a good ummah until you rise yourself, you change your condition, you work on yourselves. But this is true both ways. Allah does not change the condition from good to evil or evil to good until the people, they change their own nufus, they develop this qabiliyah, they develop this potential of being slaved and colonized. So when they develop this weakness, they destroy themselves, they become easy prey for the enemies. Okay, so this was the only discussion which remained from the previous session. Now let's